Yo, I gotta tell you about this new app that promotes Black group economics. Did you know of the $1.8 trillion that is spent annually by Black communities in North America? Only 2% of this wealth stays within our community. Our money stays in our community for only 6 hours, compared to our Jewish, white, and Asian counterparts at 30 days. Black Network is here to change that. We really need to support this. See you in the Black Network.
Hey everyone, thank you so much for joining us again for another episode of Rooted in Blackness. I am Emma Ansa and I'm here with my esteemed colleague, Lisa Vitello, and we are joined by two titans in Black radio, Jason Henry and Patrick Morris. So thank you so much for joining me, guys. Before we get started on this topic, the economic pressures of Black radio, and since the two of you are here in Canada, we will talk about Canada. Introduce yourselves to us. Tell us a little bit about yourselves.
You can go ahead, Jason.
Sure. My name's Jason Henry. Go by the name DJ Sessions. I am the founder of iLIVE Radio, which is a radio network. The radio network in itself is a Toronto station. We had a Caribbean station, and we had 2 stations in the UK as part of our network. Been championing independent music and independent broadcasting for the last 18 years in Canada.
I'm Patrick O'Morris, and I joined iLIVE when we launched in Toronto about 11 years ago. Jason approached a few of us to explore the idea to see what we could do within supporting independent artists around Canada. Really, it's where we started, and eventually, as Jason was saying, migrated into iLIVE UK, iLIVE Caribbean, and then we also migrated into a lot of live events, iLIVE Soul Fest, Soul Fest Lounge, festivals. Yeah, it's been one hell of a ride, to say the least.
Yeah, and I've known the two of you for a long time. We go back, way back. And I remember the first time I attended an event held by iLIVE, and it was a Christmas party, maybe like 5, 6, 7 years ago. And I just remember walking in and saying, wow, these guys are really doing the thing. I want to start with you, Jason, because I know you're from the UK and you came to Canada. And what inspired you when you landed here to start this radio station?
Well, there's a couple of reasons as to why I started. So I've been in radio since the age of 14, pirate radio in the UK. You guys don't understand pirate radio here in Canada, but essentially we used to go into tower blocks.
We don't understand.
No, you don't understand. I know this. I know. I've done the history. Don't worry, it wasn't the same. Yeah. So, 14 years of age, 13-story tower block, climbing out the window, getting onto the roof, erecting an aerial, being raided by the police, etc. But I grew up in an era where the pirate radio stations in London, if you looked at the numbers, the top 5 radio stations broadcasting were pirates. That's how influential they were in the UK. Influential enough that, a lot of the music that was being played moved over to mainstream or commercial radio, and a lot of those DJs moved into legitimate broadcasting jobs. Giles Peterson, David Rodigan, Tim Westwood, they all started on pirate radio. So I've been part of pirate radio and pirate radio culture and a DJ for a number of years. And I used to do commercial radio eventually for a radio station in South London called Choice FM, which was the first legal black commercial radio station they had, and that opened around about 93, 94. I was on there in 97. So I used to do radio. I used to do DJing in clubs. So when I came to Canada, I initially started because I wanted to be able to still play music to people that used to come and watch me DJ or listen to me on the radio. I found some technology that allowed me to do it. So I started very humbly behind the desk at my dad's house where I was staying when I first moved. And then it kind of grew. right? As the technology improved, I was able to get into video broadcasting around about 2009. And then iLIVE was really born. Even went back to the UK, did a launch party for the channel. And it was really just me on my own. You know, I used to invite DJs down to my basement to do guest shows, etc. And we did a few fundraising events as well. So it was the first 7 years was just really me kind of working on the brand, trying to explore. What I did realize when I came here, though, was there was a significant gap in radio. You know, the college radios were kind of going this way, right? Your legendary station that you had pretty much being handcuffed to a certain degree. G98.7 was just about to launch, and I was there at the launch as well. And one thing I realized is that you cover music from the diaspora, you know, soca, reggae, you know, jazz, and the jazz seems a little bit funny in Canada, to be honest. But you know, you had those genres covered, but one thing you didn't have covered was independent R&B and soul music. I know there was a history of it at one point, and I'm sure there was commercial, somewhat commercial support for it. But when I arrived, there was none. And the funny thing was, there was artists I heard in the UK that I assumed were American, to only find out they were Canadian. When I come to Canada, I don't hear them played on any of your radio stations, including your black radio stations. We're not playing these artists, right? So,
and it's still a thing.
For example,
Hmm?
what artists?
Oh, Slacker the Beat Child, Nicole. I just played her today. You know, Nicole Chambers. You know, I never knew Glenn Lewis was a Canadian artist until I came here. You know, and you know, one thing I thought about, and the other thing as well, was that the festivals that you had, like all your festivals were great. I remember one thing I used to say to my people back home in England was, the festival scene out here is fantastic, but R&B and soul music was tacked on to other festivals. So it was tacked on to the jazz festival, it was tacked on to other festivals. It didn't have its own independent festival. So my idea was, conceptually, when I first started, was if I can build a platform that supports the music, eventually, if I get enough support, I'll be able to put on a show to support these artists. And because I have good ties back home, I'll be able to promote those artists, those more grassroots artists back home, because I've got a channel back home. And so that was my idea. Oh, you are?
Yeah, I'm going to back you up just 1 second, because Jason was, because he'd been familiar with you know, how pirate radio worked in the UK, he was like, we need to have a pirate radio here in Toronto.
Came close.
And we were like, you know, things are a little bit more guarded here by the CRTC. We're black men not wanting to go to jail for something like this.
Well, that deep.
And so I think after having that conversation about how things were done and the brain drain that ended up happening from the pirate radio station into commercial that happened in the UK, you know, when iLIVE started, I think the platform, not only did it fill a gap, like Jason was saying, but CKLN, 105.5, they were all starting to change the format. They were all starting to go in a different direction. And so where the local...
These are Toronto stations?
Those were like community college radio stations.
Oh, okay. But in Toronto.
And in Toronto, yes. And those are the only places that if you were a new emerging artist, that you'd be found. Those were the only place that you would find like reggae consistently at a certain time on a Friday night. You know, anything that was independent, black, or even, not even just independent, just pretty much almost anything that was black. It was either we were listening to WBLK to try to get the R&B scene
out in Buffalo. Yeah,
that's from Buffalo, or it was the college radio. And then when the college radio format started to change, which seemed to coincide when G98 and got their license, and that started to happen. So, mighty coincidence. You know, when we launched iLIVE, it definitely did fill in a lot of the gaps that a lot of those independents had no place at all to be able to showcase. Because now even when G was launched, they would have been competing against the big names, and that's where the commercial market's going to be, right? So when Jason talked about bringing the pirate radio format that he had been involved in for so long, iLIVE was able to adopt a lot of that format when we launched online. And it also followed in line a lot with what the college radio was doing, because the college radio shows were really driven by the presenters. These were music lovers who volunteered their time to be able to express themselves musically. And when you look at commercial, it's somewhat of a pay-to-play sort of format. And for us, the presenters that we spoke to, that we brought into the fold, they were music lovers, and they were able to play what they wanted with. I think the only thing that we ever really talked about is we didn't really want to hear what you were going to hear the top 40. Bring your style, your feel, your vibe towards this, as well as focusing on breaking some of the independent artists. So anyways, I just wanted to jump in there, Jay, and talk about the pirate radio piece.
Absolutely. And just to follow up on Patrick said, like, Patrick is talking about really the evolution of iLive. What I was referring to was the reason why I built it in the first place, right? And that took a while for me to establish not only myself in the community and build that trust, but also get a good sense of the landscape. I had to go through a few cycles to do that, see where the opportunity was going to land. So when we pulled the trigger, to Patrick's point, absolutely we leveraged the college radio format, essentially giving space for people to be able to play exactly what they wanted to play. And because they're music connoisseurs, they understand the music, they want to be able to communicate that music. But the underlying kind of strategy that I had was find a place for independent artists to have a platform to have their music heard, find a place for them to be interviewed. We podcast everything so people can go back and listen to these particular ones. They will support our platform. So when it came time for us to now transition from that to something that was live, we'll have immediately inbuilt support. That was the strategy. Admittedly, we kind of fast tracked that significantly, but once we launched, but it's just the way it worked.
So Patrick, what is your involvement in iLive? You do what versus Jason does what? Because in Atlanta, I didn't know about this station. I will find it, I will listen, but now I'm curious.
When I got involved in iLive, I saw the vision and I loved the idea. And so it began a process of putting my money where my mouth was. I did have a show on the station for quite a few years. It's more of a talk show. Nobody would teach me how to DJ. I don't understand. Everybody I would ask, they would all look at me and tell me, stay in your lane.
Yeah.
And I was like, come on.
Well in your lane, my friend.
See what I mean? I'd ask for music so I can practice.
Oh,
Nobody
the
would give me music.
shade.
I'm telling you, no love.
Call it what it is.
So,
University, you learn at this point.
I mean, this old dog can learn some new tricks. They just wouldn't let me. When it came time for us to sort of expand into the different things that we were doing, whether it's Sophie's Lounge, all that sort of stuff, it was my role kind of just sort of stepped in as a co-founder with the brand. Whether it was financially that we needed, it was planning, it was execution. I think in a lot of ways we were both, the head chef as well as the head dishwasher as well as the head greeter. We kind of did a little bit of everything that needed to go in order to get the vision moving and make it sustainable.
So as I mentioned, I live in Atlanta, where obviously there's a ton of Black radio, multiple stations that play R&B or, run the gamut. I moved here from LA. Stevie Wonder's radio station, KJLH, is in LA, Black owned, obviously. I don't know of any traditional radio stations in Canada that are Black owned. To be honest, I'm from Montreal, as is Emma. I don't know of any radio stations that play Black music in Montreal on a consistent basis. There's no Black radio. I know Toronto does, but And granted, I've been out of the country for decades now, but I feel like there has been no evolving across the country in terms of what we can listen to unless we're online. Am I wrong?
No, I think I think you're right.
You're not wrong at all.
When G98 was first launched, it was the first and kind of the only, I guess you could say, commercial thing that existed. There was always stuff that people could find online to listen to, what they would classify as urban, a code name for Black music, but there really wasn't. And then eventually, G98 became no longer Black owned. iLIVE is very unique in that from when we started up until today, we've filled that gap.
Yeah, and just to add to that, me coming from the outside, seeing exactly the same thing. Like black music ownership generally across radio outside of the United States, which is a big enough market to support that, is relatively rare. I mean, even in the UK, we didn't get to the 90s until we had a Black-owned radio station. And even that Black-owned radio station, which was Choice FM, was around for around about 10 years. And they did something very smart. At the time, they started to have digital licenses, DAB licenses were coming into play. So the owner of Choice FM purchased those DAB licenses and sat on them, because he realized that eventually when DAB starts to take off, larger commercial radio stations will come in to want to buy his station, because he held the licenses for London and Birmingham, which is a city outside of London. That's exactly what happened. One of the largest commercial radio stations, Capital, came in, purchased the station. It's then no longer Black owned, but it was still Black run for about 5 years. And they had a 5-year agreement. They couldn't change the programming. But the moment that 5-year agreement happened, almost to the day, every single Black presenter got fired. And they completely changed the format to dance music.
Okay, correct me if I'm wrong. And again, it could be my ignorance being stateside. Mm-hmm. Black music, even if we're talking about top 40, Billboard charts, Black music dominates all the pop charts regardless. So why change formatting if it's such a proven formula in terms of generating money? It makes money. Black music makes money.
Well, here's the thing, right? And I'll talk about the UK, then I'll talk about Canada a little bit differently. So in the UK, when that happened, Capital wasn't really interested in the type of Black music that was being played, and there were other channels coming up that kind of covered that. Radio 1 started something called Radio 1 Extra, which was a channel dedicated to what they call urban music. And they kind of marginalized it so they can pull it off the normal Radio 1s, Radio 2s, Radio 3s, Radio 4s in terms of programming. Let's put it in its own bucket, throw all the young DJs in there. That's your lane, right? And it became one of the most popular ones. So Radio 1 Extra was already running really, really hard against Choice FM at the time. There was no money in it. At the end of the day, it comes down to what advertising can you attract to generate the money to ensure that the investments you're putting into the radio station running it makes sense. You have shareholders you have to worry about. The kind of music that was being played wasn't attracting advertising. So, dance music and top 40 R&B pop music does in the UK. So they moved that station over to that format, made a ton of money. Now, coming back to Canada, one of the challenges that G98.7 had is the same thing. Our music in Canada doesn't generate enough advertising revenue.
Our.
Yeah, our music, because it's our music, right?
But I mean, you being a Brit, our music. I like it. It's cute.
Yeah,
we're all one man. It's
it's our music. Let's not get into the nuances of how we influence you, vice versa. It's neither here nor there.
Canadian. I'm Canadian.
Regardless. Yeah. But seriously, it's the same challenge you have here when it comes to advertising dollars. All right, it's a very, very flat environment here. It's very much like built for particular advertisers to attach themselves to you and give you the money that you need to generate revenue. Anything that goes against that will not be funded. Advertising become very, very difficult. And to be honest, within our own communities in Canada, within Toronto explicitly for G987, there just wasn't enough money flowing into G987 for it to be viable, right? So it struggled until it couldn't survive anymore, hence got purchased. And then you start seeing the format change.
One of the things that we also, I guess, a little bit different here in Canada than in the US, and when you look at the breakdown of the population of Black individuals in Canada, Canada as a whole is about 4.3%. And the biggest population would be in Ontario, which is about 5.5%. Having said that, though, anywhere you go, whether it's you're walking into a mall, pretty much everywhere you go, and the music that's playing in the background is Black music. It's just that because I think part of the economics of it is they're looking at, well, if we are going to make this station very quote unquote Black, then we're only appealing to 5.5% of this particular province. And then how is that broken up in terms of the reach of that particular radio station? There's a whole lot of mathematics that I'm sure that's going into that equation. That's on one hand, but on the other hand, for me, everywhere you go, everything you hear is Black music, and whether it's a white artist that is singing Black music or it's a Black artist.
That's where I was about to go. That's where I was about to go.
Right. I just want to add to what Patrick is saying, and I understand the statistics. Okay. But this is the problem, and I said this is the problem that G987 was going to have. When you create yourself as a Black station, you marginalize yourself into only Black Caribbean formats, right? Reggae, soca, a little bit of R&B, most of it US R&B or Drake, right? Or Weekend, anything that crosses over.
Kind of with just Drake.
Yeah, right. Exactly, right. So you marginalize yourself to the point where Patrick's statistics will be true, right? Why would I be attracted to a station that only covers like 5% of your population in Toronto? There's no dollars there, right? Now in the UK,
just interject. The population of LA, I don't know what it is now, but when I was there, Black population of LA was 12%. So it's deceptively low.
That state has more people than Canada does.
Oh, definitely. The population of California from the 90s, the population of California has been greater than that of the entire population of Canada. Yes.
Correct.
But still,
there's one other thing I wanted to say, if I can interject, which is that we're talking about the consumers of music being 5%, but we know that there are a lot of non-melanated people. There's a large percentage of non-melanated people
that's all they listen to.
Are some of the biggest consumers of our music. Plus, what you just said, Patrick, which is there are some non-melanated people that can sing Black music.
So if I was opening a Caribbean restaurant, if my focus was going to be to make my jerk chicken the hottest jerk chicken on the planet, I'm going to alienate not just the people who don't look like me, but a lot of people who do look like me who can't eat pepper. Like my wife and I, we fight all the time because she's a Bayesian who does not eat pepper, and I love the heat. So I think that when a lot of these businesses, and this is one of the challenges that I had with G97, is that it felt when they launched their news reports or some of the reporting sounded very much like my grandfather back in Jamaica, what he would have listened to, and that was a turnoff for me because it didn't sound. Like it didn't connect with me, didn't really appeal with me. Now I'm not saying that you have to change your recipe to appeal to necessarily everybody, but how do you keep the heart and soul of what of your restaurant without going too far? And I think a lot of the times from my experience, anyways, my point of view, I found that when they launched, there was not a very good balance to be able to appeal to the broader Canadian diaspora. Because like when you look at the U.S., most of the Blacks in the U.S. have a similar history and a similar culture and a similar feel. I stood in North Carolina surrounded by a bunch of Black people who I felt very confused because they didn't understand any of my Jamaican slang. Wherein in Toronto, if they're from Barbados, Trinidad, Antigua, wherever, everybody would speak their own slang, and we could all understand each other. It was very common. So for me, I think that one of the things that we try to do on our station is you would have the diversity of voices, whether that was going to represent whether the Caribbean or even within the Caribbean, there's a huge diaspora within that. You have the Latino section of that. It's so broad, and so when you're looking at that 5.5% throughout Canada, it's still very diverse. For a long time, we didn't play Afro. Was it Jason? Afrobeats. Afrobeats. When we look at the diaspora,
we could go on and on. But yeah.
There's a broad spectrum that needs to be covered, and how do you find that balance and make that commercially viable so that your advertisers are going to be like, okay. Or am I going to turn on the radio and I'm going to hear Pookie's Chicken Shack,
Pookie and Ray Ray,
something like that. Like how do you find this balance here to appeal to everybody? And I think that's part of the struggle.
Well, I think Patrick clearly illustrated one of the challenges you have here in Canada, and I've said this before. And Black Canadians don't like when I say it, but I'm going to say it anyway. There is no such thing as Black Canadian culture. And because you didn't develop Black Canadian culture, right, holistically, and Black meaning not just by color, but also by trend, by feeling, by emotion, musically, etc. Because you never had that clear identity, everyone held onto their own culture. Trinidadians became state of Trinidad, Jamaicans are Jamaicans, Bajans are Bajans, right? You're just living in Canada and stay within those lanes. When G987, their point of view was, we're going to focus on these particular cultures, subcultures within the Black community. Like I said, when G987 first launched, there was no Afrobeats, right? The first radio station that featured a dedicated Afrobeat show was iLIVE Toronto. We started that.
So you're saying that delineation is
But I think that delineation is present in the UK as well.
But it's not. Here's the difference, right? And this is the reason why I said you couldn't develop Black Canadian culture unlike Black British culture. When people came from the Caribbean to Canada, I would ask them, how often do you go back home? I go back home every year. Every couple of years I go back home. Ask the same question of the generation that dropped into the UK. Some people didn't go home for 10 to 15 years because we couldn't. We were disconnected from our culture. So what happened was we developed our own Black British culture.
What is Black British culture?
I will tell you from a musical perspective.
But no, right? From a musical perspective, definitely. I can tell.
Right.
I can tell British R&B. I can tell it from the 90s.
Why?
Tell it.
Why? How?
Because it's not as formulaic for me.
Mm-hmm.
It's much more circle back, but I want to in that because I'm going to lose my train of thought. I feel like the music, yes, the Black British music is separate. That's a separate entity, but Black British culture, I feel is very comparable to Black Canadian culture because everyone is from
Understood. There's a recognition that you come from where you come from.
Exactly. And
however,
you stay with your people.
However, I will say this. However, because we couldn't have the option to go back home as often as you guys had the option to go back home.
Why?
It was too expensive. You couldn't travel. Most of them came by boat, so they didn't come by plane. Right? The Great Migration in the UK started in the 40s and early 50s.
Okay, but if we're talking about our generation. Well, assuming
I'm talking about I was the first generation born in England,
okay.
right? So I was born in 1970, right? So my mum came in the 60s. I was born in the 70s. So we were part of the first generation. So people that are 5 years, maybe 7 or 8 years older than me, who were going into their teenage years, they're the ones that really started to formulate what you consider to be Black British culture, because we were thrown into a situation where we were isolated, right? It was, we came from our great houses and farms and good living in the Caribbean to slum living in the UK. We had to develop our own communities, our own culture, and because we were influenced by other people around us, because reggae music and ska music was huge in the white community in the 60s, right?
Yes.
So punk was huge as well. Punk was seen as an offside thing. So punk rockers, Black people, and people into ska and reggae that were white all had to party together.
Yeah.
And so we created our kind of sound. So if you look at Black or urban culture in the UK, it's always been very diverse. It wasn't Black, it was diverse with people that were around Black people, or we were influenced by other cultures coming in. Hence we created Lovers Rock, we created our own version of R&B with the Brit Soul and the Brit Funk in the 70s. Then it became British Soul. That's why it sounds different. We were influenced by the US, Black R&B from the UK, from the US, but we mixed it with what we were learning as Black British in our Black British culture as we grew up. And that was adapted and co-opted by a bunch of white people around us. The biggest soul DJs in the early 80s, late 70s, early 80s were white. But they were playing Black music that was being created in the UK as well as US music. So the way we developed our culture was very different to Canada. Canada was transient, constantly transient. You're going back and forward all the time. So how do you then separate yourself to clearly identify yourselves as Black Canadian, other than the fact that you were born here? Culture.
Not to mention, we were, stuck next to a giant that is sucking all the oxygen out of the room. With how close we were to America, and their noise coming through the airways had a significant influence. So a lot of the whether it was rap or R&B in the early 90s, they tended to, rather than create their own sound, they tended to emulate what they were experiencing from the US.
I can buy that, because in the UK there's no proximity to other Blackness even now, really. Okay, I'll buy that.
So I will say that I agree, because the time that I spent in London, because I have a cousin who is actually a DJ. So when I went there,
your cousin is actually a DJ, not on this podcast right now.
Well, because he's this was like late 80s. Like, he's not doing that anymore. He's a doctor now. So it's just like, but back then he was in med school and all that stuff. And he would take me to these parties, and the music to me sounded different, even though I knew, okay, I know this is R&B, but there's something different about the way it sounds. There's something different about the melodies and the beats, but I loved it, right? And Jason, when I first heard Omar's music, this is the prime example of somebody out there in the UK who's crushing. And his music, you could tell there's a difference in his type of music versus music that I hear even in the United States. Not to say that there isn't some influence there, but I can tell there's a difference, and a beautiful difference.
I have a thought. And I'm not going to talk about now. I'm going to talk about when we were coming up, late 80s, early 90s. That someone like Omar, you can hear his heritage infused into that Brit.
100%.
Soul. Whereas Black American R&B, there's no heritage. So we don't pull from our Caribbean or our African roots, because Black R&B doesn't have that, or didn't have that. Now more so, but when we were coming up, non-existent. And maybe that's why British R&B sounded, but it still sounds, but sounded so different to me. I could always pick it out.
Yeah, I mean, American music has its heritage, right? Like, it comes from the blues, and slave songs, etc. You had a heritage which is very different for the most of people in America, or Black Americans, or indigenous Black Americans, they like to call themselves at this juncture, a different way they interpret their music. In if you take Omar as an example, and it's a great example, he came up in the 80s when he first started. 87 he started. If you look at Maxwell, Erykah Badu, D'Angelo, all quote Omar as their influence for the music that they started to produce in the 90s.
Mm.
Because one thing about Omar, and again, this goes down to the individualism of British music, is that Omar does Omar at all times. He doesn't worry about what anybody else is doing. He doesn't follow a trend. He does music that relates to him and him alone. And that's why I keep saying that, great thing about the UK, it was a melting pot of innovation, because drum and bass came from the UK, rave came from the UK, we UK garage, like we will take elements of stuff from the outside and fuse it into our own kind of musical genre, and then the community will support that genre, and that even if it's Black people that create it, you'll see a multi-national people that kind of support the music, white, Black, Asian, it doesn't matter. It's more of a cultural thing or a youth movement. That's how you used to divide the music. So it's a very different paradigm than it is to the Northern United States. So if I'm going back to now our experience in radio in Toronto, Patrick is right, heavily influenced by the US. Now it's maybe changing slightly to start to get more independent, but when we was coming up with iLIVE, there was no support for it, right? There really wasn't, right? They had a little flash in the pan here or there, a couple of people might bust through, but most of the really talented people in Canada, and trust me, I have never seen a country with more talent per head than Canada.
I was going to say,
not even close.
Talent here?
Not even close.
There's no. I'm going to take this back a little bit, and that. So when we were putting on shows, a lot of people were like, "So you guys are going to start doing stuff in the U.S.?" And for us, it was the U.S. How many millions of people would we be competing against? It's a huge market that you're trying to break into that noise. But there are a lot of amazing Canadian artists that would do extremely well in the UK, because they might have a similar vibe, they might have a similar sound, and it's be a little bit easier for them to crack that market than necessarily the US. Because what a lot of Canadian artists do is they look at this huge ocean that they can dive into the US, and that's where they think they need to go. I need to leave Toronto, I need to leave Canada to go to the US, make it big, and then maybe come back. And so there's not a lot of focus here in Canada because everybody's looking to leave. And it's like that, whether it's acting, pretty much everything, because of our proximity to this huge market.
But there's also the lack of support here.
There's lack of support, but it's also not a strictly Black phenomenon in Canada. If you want success as an artist, you leave Canada.
Yeah, definitely.
An athlete.
But you still have.
You leave Canada.
You have a huge percentage of the population that if you are a white artist, like, you make a lot more money here in Canada for the most part than you would before you necessarily exhaust that market to go to the US.
Correct.
For us, when we looked at people that we were going to bring into the UK to introduce into that market, the thought process really was, why are we trying to do what everyone else is doing, which is to go to the US and see it as the be all and end all, wherein we know it's not. When there are markets around the world who enjoy amazing music and would give the opportunity to listen to that. So I think a big part of it is, once you get to a level of The Weeknd or Drake, then the world's your oyster. But before you get there, we've worked with I'm not gonna name the group, but agencies here in Ontario that have funding to help artists. But then when you go to them to get some funding to help you in your project,
See,
then the hoops you need to jump through have already jumped through in order to get there. It's like, I don't even need your services at this point in order to help me to get to, because you expect me to be there already. Right. And so
Patrick's being nice, right? Patrick's being nice. He's trying to be political. Listen, we went to Factor to get funding for our festival. Okay. Factor courted us because what happened with Factor was they realized there wasn't enough diversity on their jury especially when it came to black music. So they courted us as an organization that supports black music and plays black music, convinced us to send some of our people to become jurors. I asked a simple question. If we do this, does this put us in a position to get funding from Factor? Because our festival qualified for it. When we actually went to the table to get funding, then it was, oh, well, you know, you have to do X, you have to do Y, you have to do Z. We had Factor members at our workshops giving talks about independent artists, etc. So we've done the work. But again, Factor is who you know, not what you do. And that's the problem with Canada.
I think Jason is spot on, because I've seen this in film and TV in Canada, because I have a project and it's the same thing. And I added diversity specifically to appeal to funders. And I don't know anyone in Canada. So
and that's what I'm saying. It's all of those things, and they still, at the end of the day, they still will not help. You still don't get that funding. And yes, Factor is a big one, and you know they pride themselves in being here. And you know, these are the things you have to do. You got to make sure that you are, basically spreading joy. It has to be multiple artists and what have you. So to Jason's point, you checked off all the boxes, yet still, and this is not only Factor. There are others. The same thing is happening. Look at Afrofest canceling, right? Mama's Kitchen canceled. Like a lot of them are canceling because they're not getting the funding. African Fashion Week is struggling. Like there's a problem, which leads us to the economic pressures part. Because Jason, when G98, I can't even keep up the name, the word, it's like so many different names. But when it was G98 and it was up for sale, you brought us together. We had a whole podcast, and you were like, "Look, Black people, this is our opportunity. What are we doing?" Right? And in the end, it didn't happen. We still can't get a terrestrial radio station that's owned by Black people.
What was the price? What was the going price?
And that's what I wanted to get to Jay to tell us. The first thing is, what was the price, and why do you think it was like pulling teeth to get our community to come together? And I know you wanted to talk about this. So I'm opening it up for you, my friend.
I understand. I'm not gonna reveal what the price was, because the price was actually wasn't fully revealed, because it wasn't just buying the station; it was also buying the debt the station was on as well, right? So I remember when we had the conversation on the podcast, and I said, "Here's a prime opportunity of ownership. Let's take this opportunity, jump in as a consortium, let's own this platform, diversify it so it covers Black music in general, right? Not just reggae, soca, and some top 40 R&B. You know, they just started doing a bit of Afro beats, but you got house music, you've got soul, funk, you've got all kinds of different diversity in programming that will attract a wider audience. If your listener figure goes up, you'll attract more advertisers because you get a wider diversity of people. The reasons as to why it didn't happen is the whole crabs in the bucket mentality. Look, you have a lot of very successful Black people in Toronto and in Canada who earn a lot of money, right? And have the opportunity to raise the funds to own this property. Now, there were some challenges around the financials and how you're going to apply for advertising. But again, you need to be visionary in what you're going to do. Understand that you're going to run at a loss until you build out your medium to long range plan. You may not be profitable for 3 to 5 years.
But that's business, period.
Yeah, but no one was thinking that way, right? I know there was a group that put in a bid, but the bid was so ridiculously low, they just didn't make any sense. So again, that ownership of that station went outside of our community. And when it did, it got purchased, then we complained about the fact it went outside our community after the fact.
A lot of complaining. And it's like,
complaining.
Why are we complaining?
You had the opportunity.
We had so many conversations.
Yeah, there's a ton. I mean, even from the conversations I was having with a couple of people that were on these kind of bidding organizations or trying to bid for it, I was looking at their plans and I said, there's a huge opportunity in digital, right? You don't have DAB here, but internet and mobile is going to be the next big thing, right? Start planning for that. Start planning for that kind of digital mobile phone presence. Invest in it, because that's going to be your opportunity to get to a wider audience, and not just in Toronto. Yeah, across the country. Like I said, if you have a seed station here and it becomes successful, you should be looking at Montreal, you should be looking at Calgary, you should be looking at Edmonton. Start to move this across the country. Smaller projects but connected. Here's your opportunity to build something that you can build off of into a network, because if you don't have a network, Black music can't survive. It just doesn't. It just won't. It becomes homogenous and regionalized within a certain space, and it doesn't come outside of that. You've got to be able to connect. We lacked the fortitude or the guts to do it. But
the guts.
Yeah, we didn't have the guts to do it. We didn't want to be seen as doing it and it going wrong, and you holding the back if it goes wrong.
Yeah, that seems to be the thought process a lot as it relates to our community, but we'll be the first ones to complain, as you said, why all these people owning? I always say this, Black people have been here since the 1500s, yet you see other communities come to this country long after we were here, and they'd be owning stuff and taking their people along with them and continuing to build and owning and continuing to build.
But that's different, because there are, separate from your point, there are also barriers in terms of lending from banks and the racism that's inherent in a lot of the way that not just Canada but stateside operates. So that's a separate.
Yeah, but
yeah, to a point. It
exacerbates the.
And also, they, like, for example, the South Asian community are not white. They are. Yes, but they are not treated the same way. Granted, they may be treated better than we are, but they still have to go through processes as well. However, they were still able to achieve it. So the question is, well, maybe this is a whole other conversation for a whole other day, but when you see that, Greektown, Little Italy, Chinatown, what's the other one? Little Portugal. I mean, I could go on and on and on. And then we have Little Jamaica. And Little Jamaica has been gentrified big time. So it raises the question, which is what barriers are we facing? What are these economic pressures that we go through? But again, this is more of a broader conversation that I'm kind of lane changing to, so we'll go back to radio for a second.
Well, if you relate it even to radio, just wider, like economic pressure comes when you don't have economic independence, right? We don't strive for economic independence as a community, right? The South Asians, they strive for economic independence. That's why they have their own FM radio stations in Toronto.
They do.
The Indians, same thing, right? The indigenous, as badly as they're treated, same thing, right? We do not have a clear enough identity to get to a point of economic independence. We don't keep the Black dollar inside of our communities, inside of Canada, to make us viable for investment.
the gentrification of Little Jamaica, you know, the barber shops, the beauty shops, all the stores that were there that have been there since the 80s or the 70s or something like that, none of them owned the building.
That's the problem.
And they've been there for so long, and even down Bathurst and Bloor, you know, where around Anasteds, where that used to be. Again, that was a huge wave of Black businesses in that area. They didn't own any of those buildings. They were long-term tenants, and
Renters,
so when gentrification came, they had no say.
Yeah,
You know, the owners of the building pushed them out. And I think, you know, when we look at, I think there's so much focus for Canadian artists to go into the US in order to make money that there's not a lot of what am I doing here? And number one, what am I doing? What's the footprint that I'm creating here? And then who am I bringing up and replacing so that they can take over that legacy when I'm gone? It's, I need to go to the States. I need to make some money. And, you know, we can hate on that to some degree, but then there's also, you got to eat as well. And if you're not able to eat here, then you got to try and figure out how you're going to do that. But there needs to be a balance in there somewhere. I know Jason and I, you know, for this vision, this dream, we've poured a lot, not just our heart and soul, we've poured a lot of money into this because we believed in the vision, because we wanted to create a foundation, a springboard for a lot of artists. And, you know, some of the struggles we ran into along the way from a lot of the artists that we were trying to help, you know, from other people who felt threatened by us moving into a similar lane as them, not even a similar space. You know, things we ran into from that perspective. Everywhere we turned, there was a certain level of pressure of, well, what are you doing here? Why are you doing this? When from our perspective, it was very much everybody can coexist. And if the tide rides, everybody's going to benefit. But that's not necessarily the mentality. Everybody's thinking, I need to eat now and I need to eat as much as I can. And that mentality does not necessarily work well.
Yeah, it's the backbiting. It's the you know, I'm not taking you along with me. I worked very hard to get here, so I'm not willing to. And then there's also the gatekeeping that happens a lot, and the lack of unification. And I will say, Jason, I know how hard you tried. I know how hard you tried to make this thing happen here with that station, and it was
tried. We didn't try. We did it. Right, that's the very thing they said.
No, I mean with G. Sorry,
that particular.
Okay, with G. G. I mean, but I mean, G was a. I just highlighted the issue. Yeah. I had no interest in investing in G because I knew it would.
No, but you really tried to bring the community together too. Yes.
I wanted to make sure that you understood. Here's your opportunity, because if you lose your opportunity, do not complain when the opportunity passes you. And that's all they wanted to do, was to complain, right? And again, these opportunities, these chances, these things that we can do for ownership, because ownership is key. Like, we own our brand, we own our station. We never owned our building, but you know, when we eventually moved down into Queen Street East, there was an opportunity for us to have ownership of a building, right? We baked that into our lease. Like, 5 years, if we're still here, we want the option to be able to buy. Because ownership is key. And what frustrates me more than anything when it comes to radio, and to Patrick's point, some of the barriers that we face coming up, you know, it's the entitlement, it's the apathy, it's the, I don't know who you are, so how do I know you're legitimate? Well, take a look around. Yeah. And then once you do legitimize yourself, it's the, I'm not going to acknowledge the fact that you're doing this. So if we ignore you, you're going to go away. Well, no, that didn't happen either, right? Because at the end of the day, that wasn't our mentality. We've been called all kinds of names. We've been called a cult. We've been called all kinds. Oh yeah, absolutely. Because we all walk around in our iLIVE shirts because we want to brand and identify.
Oh, wow.
We were a cult. Because
Unreal.
They didn't understand, but Didn't stop them from coming to the festivals. Didn't stop them coming to the concerts.
The concerts
Right.
your concerts were lit. Your events were lit
Is
and
this
very successful.
You're using past
You know,
tense.
one thing. Sorry, one thing I wanted to, one of the most impactful things for me, and I know Jay that this will definitely resonate with you as well, is we had a show that did not do very well, and we had agreements with our artists, and the agreements that we had, from our perspective, we're business people, we understand people have to eat, and for whatever reason, I won't even get into it, the show was not as successful as we thought.
Which show is
Yes,
this?
Jason, I said, I'm not going to get into it.
Why are we not going to get into it? We're
And-
here to talk
Why,
the thing.
yeah, why not?
And-
What's-
I want to hear.
So
Because Jason
Jason was the spilled tea. So for us, at the end of the night, we sat down, we looked at each other, we're like, okay, we got to deal with this. So we dealt with it. We paid our artists, we paid the musicians, we honored our word. And as we did that, they looked at us and like, you're still honoring your word? And we came to realize that it was quite often in the industry in Toronto at the time anyways, that a lot of promoters, a lot of people who were doing things were not honoring their words. We had people who would not perform with other people because they had owed them money and all these, and we're like, that had nothing to do with us,
That's still, by the way, that's still going on.
So there was we had people who still thought it was 1992 when they had their last hit, and it was now 2016. There's a lot of variation on the theme, but for us, when we had that conversation and we kind of looked at each other and we're like, if we didn't honor our word in doing what we said we were going to do, then that's our integrity that's going to be on the line. Our reputation. Yes, of the business that we're trying to create. Because one of the things that we try to do is very much as possible is think long term. And it wasn't about what was in front of our face right now. We're setting things up. Now, some people caught the vision and understood and said, we're willing to work with you and wait to make this work. And others were just looking at what they can kind of, glean right now, very, very short-sighted. And that, again, it goes back to the vision, being able to understand that if you're building something, it is going to take some time. You do need to sort of fit into certain lanes sometimes. And part of that struggle was a lot of artists were looking at, there was this entitlement that this is happening right now, as opposed to long term. But how toxic the industry was for people not paying each other, people not honoring the word. That was something that was surprising to me. And I think, Jay, you could talk about from your perspective on that. But I think that was one of our earliest shows, and that set the tone for me anyways, as to how we were going to go about doing this.
Yeah. I mean, we've got many stories to share around being
That's
strong
why
armed.
I said this can't be one.
Strong armed and marginalized, and there's lots and lots of examples we can give. But I will say this one thing that Patrick highlighted, which has always been a mandate for us, is integrity. If we say we're going to do X, we're going to do X. It's our responsibility to make sure that this thing happens. If we didn't do our job, or we were sabotaged in that process, irrespective, we're going to honor what we say we're going to do, right? And all of the artists we've worked with, anybody that's been around our station understands that we work from integrity. If we say we're going to do X, we're going to do X. If we have to come out of pocket, we're out of pocket. That's on us. That's not on you, right? If we provide you opportunity, here's the opportunity. If the opportunity has been provided and if you share the opportunity that you're given and throw it back in our faces, you can't come back and ask me again or ask us again for anything, because we worked with you with integrity up to that point, invested in you, and you come back and say, yeah, whatever, I don't care. No, we're done.
If you break up with me, I'm not going to kiss you. right? So, and that's the thing.
Time.
That's the thing. Our community tends to catch fire late, and then it's like, okay, now, or I want to wait and see. Or if you're not, like, if I can't get a guarantee that I'm going to be a megastar because you said to me, Jason, that you're sending me to the UK, then I don't want to do this. And I also know some stories because I know y'all. So
Yeah,
yeah,
you
I know
know
some
some of the
stories, and I
stories.
know some of the artists,
Yeah,
involved. But I
yes.
will zip it. But I want to touch on iLive though, because
Mm.
we're talking about all of these struggles and stuff. But let's talk about triumphs, because you've been in the business since you came and started it. Now 18 years later. So my question to you is, how were you able to sustain it, even though you went through all of these things? You were doing something nobody else was doing. It was really focusing on independent Black artists. So how were you able to sustain it for all this time? First question. Secondly, I know that iLive Toronto took its last bow. So I want to know why.
Mm. Okay.
Collective.
So the first thing I will say, the reason why it was able to be sustained, because I had a plan, and then Patrick came in, we added to the plan, and we always had a plan and stuck to the plan. Now, some of the plans, and Patrick will probably remember this, when we first started the radio station, the Toronto radio station in 2015, in my head, I'm like, I want to build this radio station, and within 5 years, I want to do my first festival. Year 5, I had it all planned out. But then when it came to our first anniversary in 2016, as we're starting to plan for that, I remember asking everyone, like, what do you think we should do? We should do a little party. We should do X. We should do Y. We should do Z. I'm a disruptor. I'm like, no, we're going to do a concert. Okay. What concert are we going to do? We're going to do Omar. You're going to bring Omar. We're going to bring Omar. And I'll be upfront right now. I didn't have a clue what I was doing. I had never done a concert before. I couldn't tell you what a backline was. I've never rented a venue this big. I've never done a promotion, right? But because we are planners and we figured out how to kind of work it in a way that we can get this thing done, when we did do the concert in 2016, no one knew about iLive. No one really knew about iLive. We were just starting. But they hell knew about iLive after that show. And I remember when, on the day of the show, Patrick will remember this, I was panicking, right? Because money was going up.
We were all panicking. What's wrong with you?
We were panicking because tickets had gone out, and I got the numbers back, and they said, oh, only 272 tickets have sold. I'm like, oh my God.
Out of how many?
I'm telling you, our people catch fire late.
2,000 capacity.
Ooh.
That's what I'm saying. People,
right?
That's the culture here. That we catch fire late.
It was a blessing in disguise, because we actually we had sold out the VIP balcony, because Toronto people who they got booze and
love their VIP.
Love their VIP. That was sold early.
They love that here.
But you love that everywhere.
But that venue literally went to capacity off the door alone. Now, it was one of those watershed moments for Toronto, and it was a beautiful moment as well, because Omar was supposed to come 10 years before, got cancelled, and hadn't been back since. So all those people that want to see him 10 years ago came. Their kids are now 18, 19. They came with their parents, and it was like a whole community of Toronto came together. I was watching people who haven't seen each other for like 15 years meeting in this space, watching one of their favorite artists. And we added Glenn Lewis, and we added Ivana Santilli, and we actually added an independent artist called Lisa Banton to open up. And that really set, I think, what we wanted to do going forward. This is going to be part of our whole package of what iLive's about. It's not just the radio station. We're going to do concerts, festivals. Let's start to plan out what we're going to get.
That was supposed to be year 5.
Year 5. We did without the show. The festival came in year 2. Yeah, we did our first festival. So everything escalated because just the nature of how we were trending. And it was the right time and the right thing to do at the time. But we've done so many things,
So
trying
many
to
things.
expand into this artistic community and having the station as the bedrock where everybody came into to kind of have the music played and heard and interviewed, and we did a ton of stuff, which was pretty amazing.
Speaking of a ton of stuff, there is one thing I want to talk about that you guys did that nobody else did, and that was over COVID. Remember when we were talking, Jason, and you said to me, I want to do this virtual concert.
Online festival.
It was a virtual festival, right? And you had people in the States performing. You had Omar in the UK. Then you had people in Toronto, and it was all virtual. Remember iLIVE Soul Fest?
iLIVE Soul Fest 2020. Yes.
Yes.
I remember.
I will never forget that. And I think that was when I first got introduced to Omar. And I remember I called you and I was like, who's this guy? Like, who is this guy? So you had a lot of really great artists, and we pulled it off. We
cobbled everything together. It was completely insane.
Duct tape, masking tape.
I used a gaming platform to host the whole thing, but we pulled it off. And again,
pulled it off.
And it was again the investment. Like, we've always been an organization that's always been at the front of the wave. We did it first.
Yep.
Once we did it and people saw what we did, and then how we did it, oh, you can do that? Suddenly, a couple months later,
people were doing it.
By the summer, everybody was doing this stuff.
Yep.
Right? It's just the way just the way our organization's been built. We're always thinking forward.
Yeah.
And we'll fail forward. Yeah, NFTs. Yeah, we did all that. We did everything.
But also, I think it's important to also note because both of you are very talented and skilled in other things, right? So it's not just radio. So I think it's important for you to tell us what else you do.
As in our jobs. Oh, we had full-time jobs when this is all going on. Like, I'm in IT leadership. Patrick is a project manager. This is our spare time stuff.
Right.
Right. This isn't our full-time position. This is in our off hours we're doing this stuff.
Exactly.
So I would say
music, bro?
Yeah. Huh?
You want to talk about your music?
No, we're not talking about that.
Oh, now you're going to be humble?
Yeah.
Well, one thing I will say before Jason continues, is listening to Jason's album was reminiscent to the Fugees album, the Fugees' first album.
Oh.
It's very reminiscent to it. It had a nostalgic feel to it, the way that album does and did.
I'll be dropping it in the comment field family for everybody to enjoy.
That's all I'm saying about it.
I appreciate it. Now, you asked a question earlier as to why it's come to an end. Why now?
Moving on.
18 years is a long time.
Okay? Yes, indeed.
And, it's a lot of investment, a lot of time, a lot of effort. A lot of people have contributed to the iLIVE brand, the station, and everything else that we've done. And we kind of became a fixture. We could turn on iLIVE anytime we want because it's always going to be there, right? But I'm a person who needs to continually push forward, or else there's no point doing it. We had done what we were supposed to do. When we first started, everybody in that Toronto community, I will name names if you want me to, but they will look at us like, yeah, that's never going to work.
Names. Name them.
Right. Okay. I will give you an example. Right. When we did our very first concert.
I think we're good without names. I'm just saying.
No, I'm sure you are, but I don't care. Right. I'm past it now. It's done. When we did our very first Omar concert, the very first concert that we did, we actually reached out to Black publications like Share Magazine, By Blacks, etc., and said, hey, we're a small Black organization who's putting on a large concert here featuring artists from Canada and from the UK. How can you help us advertise or sponsorship, whatever? Crickets. Nothing. The the only organization that came through for us was G987. On one guy, Jomo, in G987, who loves what we did, says, I'm gonna find out how I want to cut you a deal for G987 and get you on here and get you promoted. And he stayed with his word and he got it done. So I shall always give G98 props for supporting us. But every other black magazine and organization didn't want to touch us because we weren't doing the type of music or supporting the type of music that they were aligned to. You know, I spoke to the person from Share and they're like, well, you're not doing a reggae or a soca show. So it doesn't really, our listeners won't really understand. I said, well, introduce them to this. You've got talent here that needs support, and widen your scope. Like, think about it that way. I'm not asking for you to give me $1 million. I'm asking you to give me a little advert in your paper as a sponsorship to help advertise our show. No. But you know who did? Exclaim Magazine. Immediately, without question. I sent them the information. We will sponsor you. When it came to accommodations, Gladstone Hotel sponsored us. All the people that don't look like me sponsored us.
Sad reality.
But those same people who didn't sponsor us bought VIPs and came to the show and had a great time. So now you've seen it, right?
Catch fire late. I'm telling you, that's the thing.
But you've seen it, right?
Yeah.
Okay. We did Loose Ends in November. Went back to those same people. So you've seen what we can do. You saw the response. We're doing Loose Ends, which is a legendary group. Crickets. And that's when I realized, right? This is Toronto. I am not a known entity. I have a British accent. I didn't come up in the community. I'm not a known person. Hence, they will not invest. If you gave to someone else who's known in the community doing exactly the same thing, everyone will rally around them, irrespective of whether it's.
Even though both those acts are British acts, you think it was about you?
No, it was absolutely about us.
One thing I would say about that, and that is we were very deliberate and purposeful in how we designed the shows. So although we were bringing a UK artist here that had not been here for a while, that had a big footprint here, we also included in the show a lot of independent Canadian artists that would complement, that would work. So the people who would be coming for Loose Ends would be introduced to, you know, a similar type of sound of a local artist that they could now follow, right? And create a bigger fan base for those particular artists. So it wasn't that we were just showcasing these UK talents. It was about matching the right artists with that talent to be able to broaden the awareness of what Canada has in terms of artists.
Right.
Yeah, we flattened the playing field when it came to the people that we chose, right?
Yeah.
And it wasn't just independent Canadian artists. We brought independent US artists too.
That too.
Right? Who had associated themselves to iLIVE because they listened to us and supported us. We brought them as well. And so our philosophy was, usually if you do a show, it's like opening act, headliner. We will put headline acts in between local acts.
Yes.
Right. So
that is one thing you guys really did.
My terror of an experience, but very smart on your part.
Yeah. And if you
how long to hear what I want to hear, but very smart.
Yeah.
On your part.
I mean, but it's not even so much that. It's we wanted to make sure that people just wouldn't show up for the last headliner.
Admittedly, that would have been me. Oh, you have Loose Ends with all the original members. Even I'm there. That's all I'm there for. Mm-hmm. So very smart. Very smart.
Yeah, you flatten the playing field and allow the talent to show in front of people that never heard them before. One of the artists we brought up, a woman called Sorpatio Jones, we brought up on that first Loose Ends show. No one knew about her in Canada. No one ever heard of her before. But by the time she was done, I said to her, I can't pay you a fee because she asked to be on the show. I said, but I'll get you a band and you can bring your merchandise and you can sell your merchandise at the show. We won't take anything. When she finished her set and we had a break, an interlude before Loose Ends went on, The lineup for her merch and her CDs was ridiculous.
That's it.
And again, music is a vibration. If you're good and it translates, you will get new fans. And she got fans.
Yep.
She got fans off the back of that show and got an audience on the back of that show. And that's the purpose of what we do. No offense, I don't care about the headline acts. They're going to do what they're going to do. I care about those independent artists that need a platform, an equal platform to showcase what they can do.
Exactly.
Well, let me clarify my position, because even though in this particular scenario, we're talking about Omar Loose Ends being the headliner, in the grand scheme of things, again, possibly because I live stateside, it's very rare that I'll get to see Loose Ends and or Omar. So that would be my focus, because we have massive acts that are headliners for shows here. So for me, I would have been just so appreciative, because last time I saw Omar was actually in London.
You know, again, going back to Omar, I really, really enjoy his music. I do. And his music to me is evergreen. Like, it literally never feels or sounds dated. You know, it's just beautiful music. And he's a great performer, and his personality, everything. But that's enough about Omar. Going back to iLIVE. So you said, you know, you've explained the reasons why you have decided to let it go. So tell us, like, what's next? What's next?
Well, as I explained, I did my final show today before I came on here. You know, everybody within iLive always looks at me and says, "Okay, if Jason's making this move, this is."
And I'm saying the same thing, because I know Jay.
They always say, Jason plays chess, not checkers, right?
Facts.
A game of reaction is a game of strategy. And I told him today, I said, there is nothing.
There's no cooking.
I'm done. I'm good.
There's no cooking.
Breaking news.
Yes, it's done. It's absolutely done. I said, you know, the story of iLive, legacy-wise, is never going to be forgotten. Right, the content's still there, the podcast is still there, the videos are still there. I've been preparing this for a little while in preparation for this. But, you know, everything has a cycle and everything has a lifespan. And it's 18 years is a good run, and it's the end of that run for iLive.
So what if I had an event and I wanted iLive to be the music for the event? Are we not doing any independent freelance projects? Like, literally, you're gone.
I'll put it. I won't speak for Patrick. Yeah, but I'll speak for myself. It will probably be a case of no. Right? But
I would say there was only one thing, Jason. There's only one thing that I think you and I both know that would, if every single planet were to align in a massive way to make that one thing happen, that we would consider coming out of retirement.
All right,
What's the one thing? Yes.
Just that one thing.
I'll say, I'm not going to talk about the one. Don't tell about the one thing. But I will say this.
What is with all this secrecy?
Because we play chess, not checkers, right? Remember that, right? It's the IP. If I won the lottery tomorrow,
I was just about to say that.
There'll be one thing that I do, and no offense, I would do it in Toronto, and the reason I would do it is because it will be my screw you to all you people that didn't support us in this time. You're going to have the greatest concert you've ever had in your life, and you'll never see it again.
Yep.
Well, I always say this. I'm the queen of petty, so I'm here for that. I'm here for that.
I'm in my villain era right now, so pray I don't win the lottery.
Like what you were doing earlier. That's my jam.
Yeah. There's...
having said that, I think to echo Jason, we spent a lot of time, sweat, money, effort over the last 18 years If we had not done this and we had pocketed the dollars and cents that we put towards this, there'd be a lot of difference. But we are extremely honored and grateful for the opportunity that we have to make the mark that we did over the period of time. As we move into another phase, another evolution as to who we are as individuals. I know Jason's not talking about it very much, but as he moves into his music, and I know that Jason is going to be in the public eye, and even if he's hiding his face,
whether you like it or not.
I know that there are some great things that are coming. Myself, I've moved into.
I was about to say, Patrick, you too. You're doing some wonderful things. So tell us about what you've got going on.
I'm doing some things. I just completed a novel that I'm fine tuning right now. And I've started my second one. That would be coming out soon. We have our day jobs. We do what we do. We love what we do. But there's a creative passion that lives within us. And this particular journey when it comes to iLIVE is over, but the creative passion continues. And, the self-expression has to be there.
Indeed.
And, Jay may have moved halfway across the country, but he's my brother and he knows I got his back and I know he's got my back. And in these endeavors that we continue to do separately, we're going to continue to support each other along that path.
Indeed, and I've already started reading Patrick's book, and it is.
I'm glad you have, because he hasn't sent me a copy yet.
I'm sorry.
You had your hands full.
But you know what? I just want to say in closing, as you guys know, I love you guys. You know it. We've been friends for a long time. We've seen each other go through many different evolutions and things, heartbreaks, triumphs, challenges, all of those things. And one thing I will say is iLIVE has always been my happy place. So I definitely appreciate the two of you and all that you have done to really try to get into these hard heads of the community here. Okay. And I'm not saying all of them were hard headed, but we had some hard heads. Right. So I just want to say thank you. Really, thank you. I'm sad that iLIVE is going away because I'm used to seeing it, but I will not accept that you will only come out if you win the lottery, because I have some things coming up. Rooted in Blackness has some things coming up.
Yeah.
Big things. So
if you need artists or musicians, you can reach out, but it won't be the LA.
If you need advice, sure.
That too.
You want me to connect you with people? Absolutely.
Exactly.
I'm like Mr. Fix It right now.
Okay.
But
all right. Well, I will take whatever you're willing to offer. But thank you very, very much. Any final words? Any words of wisdom that you want to impart for anybody who you might have inspired to do this on your way out?
I'll let Patrick go on this one first before I add mine.
Oh yeah. I don't think it's anything I have not said before, and that is, I'm grateful. I continue to be grateful, and whatever your passion is, stick to it. See it through. You can stand on the other side of it and say that I did it. The last thing you want to do is to be on your deathbed someday wishing that you had done X, Y, Z. You do it, and if it works out the way that you anticipate, and fantastic. If it doesn't work out the way you anticipate, still fantastic, because you did it. So right. I'm grateful that I was able to. I've done a lot of things in my life that I never thought I would do, and this is one of them, and I continue to be grateful for that.
I love it, and I agree. Just do it and keep going. And don't allow anybody else's insecurities of, no, you're not going to be able to achieve that. Don't foster that. You do it. Keep going.
Well, that was a very eloquent answer, Patrick. You know, I can absolutely echo everything that you said, but I will just add that, you know, to your point. If you have a dream, pursue it, but also make sure you have a plan.
Yes.
Don't try and figure it out whilst you go. Have a plan and stick to your plan. If you stick to your plan, show up with integrity, you know, you will build trust, you will build relationships that will last a lifetime, and a respect that will last a lifetime. You know, Emma keeps saying, you know, you guys kept trying. No, we live rent free in people's heads in Toronto, whether they like it or not. Right? We got to a point where you can't deny what was done. You can't put aside or brush aside what's been done. We've touched so much of that community, and it really showed when I made the final announcement on Facebook. I thought it would just disappear and no one will comment, but the amount of comments and people I didn't even know was watching, or even paying attention to us. Remember the Jazzy Jeff thing when we met? Jazzy
I know.
The same thing.
I remember the Jazzy Jeff thing.
Yeah. So, you know, when he said, you know, he said to us, he said to me, he goes, you know, keep doing what you're doing because you never know who's listening. You never know who's watching. Right. And
I always say the same thing. Don't pay attention to 1 people, 2 people, 5 people.
Yeah.
Don't, just keep going.
Absolutely.
Yep.
So that level of support and respect more than anything else for what we've done and how we've shown up, you know, and how it influenced other people to take a similar path. You can't buy that. So that just really solidified it's time for us to go.
Yeah.
And we're gonna go out on a high and respected as an organization. And when you look back, you'll see all the good stuff that we did, and you know, whoever can learn from it to improve it or take themselves forward, absolutely, we were the forerunners of a lot of this stuff. So,
Indeed.
you know, I'm very happy about that.
Well, thank you so much, guys. I appreciate you much.
Very much.
It's been really great, enlightening, inspiring, all of those things. So, again, thank you. This is, as I said, will be one of many. Jason and Patrick will be back to share whatever else they have going on. So they may be gone from iLIVE, but they're not gone.
No, we got.
So, thank you again. Thank you. We shall see you on the next one. Don't forget to like, subscribe, share. Until next time.
Out.